What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability, get a free price quote, and maybe you can have me at your next event. I like to play for the people. If you want to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag #WhatMakesYouFamous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Wednesday, February 19th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Trump grants clemency to Blagojevich, Melkin, and Carrick. President Trump granted clemency to 7 high-profile white-collar criminals on Tuesday. Trump commuted former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich's 14-year prison sentence for corruption, calling the length of the term, quote, ridiculous, end quote. Trump also pardoned former New York Police Commissioner Bernie Carrick, convicted of tax fraud. Financier Michael Milken, who served 2 years for insider trading. And former San Francisco 49ers owner Edward DeBartolo Jr., convicted of gambling fraud. Trump drew similarities between investigations that targeted him and the prosecution of Blagojevich, saying it was, quote, by the same people, Comey, Fitzpatrick, the same group, end quote. Political opponents immediately condemned the clemency blitz. Representative Bill Pascrell Jr., Democrat, New Jersey, said, quote, the pardoning of these disgraced figures should be treated as another national scandal by a lawless executive, end quote. This is according to the Associated Press. Number 2, Sanders takes double-digit lead in national poll. Senator Bernie Sanders, independent Vermont, has taken a double-digit lead over his nearest rivals for the Democratic presidential nomination, according to an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll released Tuesday. Sanders was backed by 27% of the Democratic primary voters surveyed, trailed by Vice President Joe Biden with 15%. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg and Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat, Massachusetts, followed with 14%. Former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg had 13%, and Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat, Minnesota, 7%. Sanders' wider lead came in as his numbers were unchanged from the last NBC Journal poll, but Biden plunged by 11 points, while fellow moderates Bloomberg, Buttigieg, and Klobuchar gained. Democrats meet Wednesday for a Las Vegas debate with Bloomberg on stage for the first time. This is according to NBC News and CNN. Number 3, judge says Stone sentencing to proceed Thursday as scheduled. U.S. District Judge Amy Berman Jackson confirmed Tuesday that Roger Stone's sentencing hearing would be held Thursday as scheduled, despite President Trump's call for a delay. Trump said that recently discovered tweets by the jury forewoman suggested, quote, significant bias, end quote. Trump also has repeatedly attacked Jackson's handling of the case, but Jackson said any further delay in Stone's sentencing wouldn't be, quote, prudent, end quote. Last week, Trump complained when federal prosecutors recommended Stone spend 7 to 9 years in prison for lying to Congress and witness tampering. Attorney General William Barr and other top justice officials overruled the recommendation, leading the case's 4 prosecutors to withdraw from the case. The Federal Judges Association held an emergency meeting Tuesday to discuss concerns over Barr's intervention. This is U.S. News and USA Today. Number 4, Ghani declared winner 5 months after Afghanistan's election. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has won re-election to a second term with 50.6% of the vote, according to the results released Tuesday. Afghans voted 5 months ago, but concerns of fraud and mechanical error forced recounts, delaying the results. Ghani's rival, Abdullah, also declared victory and said he would form an alternative government. The September vote was marred by Taliban attacks aimed at destabilizing the election. The lingering uncertainty is considered a possible threat to efforts to finalize peace talks between the U.S. and the Taliban. Negotiators for the two sides said they reached a conditional deal a few days ago. This is according to the Washington Post and the New York Times. Number 5, campaign advisor says Bloomberg will sell his media company if elected president. Mike Bloomberg will sell his financial media business if he wins the presidency this November, an advisor to his campaign, Tim O'Brien, said Tuesday. 2020 Democratic presidential candidate and the former Republican mayor of New York founded Bloomberg LP in 1981. The company has estimated annual revenue of roughly $10 billion and could be worth $40 billion, CNBC reports. The official said Bloomberg LP would be put into a blind trust for, quote, eventual sale, end quote. O'Brien said Bloomberg would be, quote, 180 degrees away from where Donald Trump is on these issues, end quote, and avoid, quote, blurring the line between public service and personal profiteering, end quote. Trump's critics have accused him of profiting when foreign dignitaries book rooms at his Washington hotel and other properties. This is according to CNN and NBC News. Number 6, hundreds allowed to leave ship in Japan as coronavirus quarantine winds down. About 500 people started disembarking Wednesday from a cruise ship quarantined in Japan over an onboard outbreak of the coronavirus. The flu-like virus infected more than 540 people on the ship, including 88 new infections announced Tuesday, in the biggest concentration of cases outside China. More passengers will be released from the vessel Carnival's Diamond Princess over the next 2 days as a 14-day quarantine ends. The United States evacuated more than 300 American passengers over the weekend. They are now isolated on U.S. military bases. The coronavirus death toll on mainland China rose above 2,000 on Wednesday, but the number of new cases fell for the second consecutive day, boosting hopes that China's travel restrictions were helping slow the spread of the disease. This is according to Reuters. Number 7, Barr reportedly tells Trump insiders he might quit over tweets. Attorney General William Barr has warned people close to President Trump that he might quit if Trump doesn't stop tweeting about Justice Department criminal investigations, the Washington Post reported Tuesday, citing 3 administration officials. Barr also has publicly called for Trump to stop commenting on Justice Department matters, saying his tweets, quote, make it impossible for me to do my job, end quote. Trump has responded with more tweets and other public remarks, saying he has every right to weigh in as, quote, the chief law enforcement officer of the country, end quote. Last week, Trump tweeted a complaint about the proposed sentence for his longtime advisor, Roger Stone, who was convicted of lying to Congress and witness tampering. On Tuesday, Trump suggested Stone should receive a new trial. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 8, U.S. brands 5 Chinese media companies as parts of Beijing's government. The United States is designating 5 major Chinese media companies as part of China's government, a State Department official said Tuesday. Effective immediately, Xinhua, China Global Television Network, China Radio International, China Daily, and People's Daily will be considered, quote, foreign missions, end quote, which means they will have to get U.S. government approval to secure office space and register new hires and staff departures with the State Department, as diplomatic missions do. Quote, they are part and parcel of the People's Republic of China propaganda machine, end quote, the official said. Quote, the fact of the matter is each and every single one of these entities does in fact work 100% for the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party, end quote. China's embassy did not immediately comment on the move. This is according to CNN. Number 9, SpaceX strikes deal to send 4 space tourists into orbit by 2022. SpaceX on Tuesday announced a deal with a company called Space Adventures to fly up to 4 private citizens into orbit in late 2021 or early 2022. Space Adventures has helped 7 space tourists visit the International Space Station. The trip in Russian spacecraft. Under the new deal, the 4 passengers will travel in a version of SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft. They are expected to take 2 or 3 trips around the Earth at up to 3 times the 250-mile high path of the space station. SpaceX has been working on and testing the Dragon spacecraft for years. It also will be used to shuttle astronauts to the space station. A cargo version of the spacecraft already is in use. This is according to CNBC and The Verge. Number 10, jury starts deliberations in Weinstein rape trial. The jury in Harvey Weinstein's rape and sexual assault trial started its deliberations on Tuesday. Earlier on the trial's 29th day, Judge James Burke denied a request by the Oscar-winning Hollywood producer's lawyers to dismiss one of the jurors because she had read a book about child abuse. Prosecutors had objected to the defense request, saying, quote, "She has done nothing wrong. We never instructed this jury that they not be allowed to read books," end quote. The judge urged the jury to, quote, "discuss the evidence, consult with one another," end quote, and, quote, "reason together respectfully," end quote. Quote, "You and you alone are the judges of the facts," end quote. Burke said. Weinstein has pleaded not guilty and said his encounters with the accusers were consensual. This is according to The Hollywood Reporter. That's 10 things you need to know today for Wednesday, February 19th, 2020. Thank you for listening. This is What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. That's it for this edition of What Makes You Smarter. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube. Username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.